Hello everybody, we're continuing with the laws of Rechilus, of tail-bearing. Before we begin, I just want to mention something we talked about a few classes ago. The Chavetz Chaim says that you're only allowed to speak Lashon Hara, evil about somebody, with 7 conditions, and one of those conditions is that it has to be l'toelis, it has to be for a constructive purpose. So one of the things the Chavetz Chaim says is that efsher, it's possible that if you want to get something off your chest, that's considered a l'toelis. So efsher means he's not totally sure. He says it's possible that it's permitted. So I spoke to a big posik this morning, and he says that if the reason you want to get it off your chest is for a mitzvah, then it's permissible. So for example, let's say you're a rebbe in a yeshiva, you're a teacher, and your kids are giving you a hard time, and you want to tell your wife about it, or your spouse about it, your husband or your wife, to get it off your chest so that you'll be a better teacher. So that's considered a mitzvah, and you'd be allowed to speak evil about your students to your spouse in that scenario, since you're doing it to get it off your chest, and it's also for a mitzvah. Okay, so let's continue where we left off. We're in Hilchos Rechilus Klal Aleph Sif Hey, which is chapter 1, number 5. And we're talking about Rechilus. Again, Rechilus is you go to somebody and say, hey, you know that so-and-so was talking about you. John was saying bad things about you. Or John was trying to do something to you that was very bad. That's called gossip mongering. And it says that God hates people like that, because those types of people, they create fights, right? Could be John and this guy, they loved each other. Now you go and tell him about stuff that John is doing, or John is saying about him, so you make them hate each other, and it says Hashem hates people like that who cause fights between people. And that's even when it's true, even when the Rechilus is true. So let's continue. Ein chiluk be'isser sipur Rechilus, ben im sipur lo ma'atzmo b'rtzono, uben im chavero having k'tzas me'atzmo b'davar, va'amar Allah v'hivtziru she'isapur l'mashadiber ploni lefanav alo dosov. Now, there's no difference whether you go and speak Rechilus on your own free will, or you get pressured into speaking it. Meaning that this guy, your friend, knows that John might have been speaking about him. He got a whiff of it, and he says, hey, what'd John say about me? Come on, tell me, come on, tell me. So even though he's pressuring you, there's still a prohibition of speaking Rechilus. V'afilo aviv rabo hivtziruhu she'yisaper lahem mashadiber ploni lefanav alodosam v'afilo imhu rak avak Rechilus afal pikin b'chol gavna aser. He says, even if it's your father or your rebbe, who you're usually responsible to honor, right? Kibud avim, honoring one's parents. It's a very important mitzvah. It's in the 10 Commandments. However, if your parent says, hey, who was talking about me? Who said that bad thing about me? Tell me who it was. Tell me exactly what they said. You're not allowed to tell them. That's Rechilus, and it's prohibited. Right? Even though that one gets long life for honoring his parents, and it's one of the most important mitzvahs in the Torah, it's in the 10 Commandments. Nevertheless, if your parent tries to pressure you to do this, since it's a prohibition, one does not listen to his parents when they tell somebody to violate the Torah. And even one's Rebbe, and that's even if it's a vak Rechilus, if it's only the dust of Rechilus, which is a lesser form of tail-bearing, which we'll discuss what that is later, God willing. Whoa. Okay, halacha vav. Afilu im hu roa sha'ay dezeh shelo yigala yisovev lo hefsed gadol be'inyanav. Now, what if the fact that you're not going to share this information is going to cause you financial harm? Could go, let's say, shehu tachas rishus acherim, you're an employee of somebody, you're under his rishus. Ukeshehem evinim es hadavar va'omdim alav shegalahem v'hu ein rotze yichashdu shegam yado im ploni va'avar zeh yisalku mimishmarto v'lo yelo achar kach v'melafarnes es b'nei bezo alfa pikein aser. Let's say your boss, he gets a whiff that somebody was doing something to him negative, or was speaking about him in a negative way, and your boss comes to you and says, hey, what did so-and-so do? What is so-and-so saying? And you don't want to tell your boss. Now, your boss is going to start to suspect you that maybe the reason you're not saying anything is because you're in cahoots with this other guy to try to do something negative to him, and you're going to get fired. Even so, not allowed to say it. One has to give up their livelihood before speaking Rechilus, before tail-bearing. It is totally prohibited. And even if you're not going to have any other way to be mefarnish yourself, any other way to support yourself. Just by the way, to stop for a second, I see that the Facebook video isn't doing so well, so I'm just going to let everyone know I'm going to post the YouTube version shortly after. Okay, so even if the choice is speaking Rechilus or losing your job, you have to lose your job. Kichol Sharei Chai V'Lavim Shemechuyev Litin Kol Asher Lo V'Lo Lavar Aleim K'Mvor B'Yordea V'Simen Kuf Nun Zayin Sif Aleph B'Haga. He says this is the same for every negative prohibition. If one has a choice to violate a negative prohibition or to lose his job, one has to lose his job, lose all of it, to lose all of his money. When it comes to a positive mitzvah, one has to give up a fifth of all of his money. So if you have to spend, there's only one lulav in town, and it's a fifth of all the money you have to get that lulav, you have to spend it. More than a fifth, you don't have to spend. When it comes to a negative prohibition, someone says, eat this bacon cheeseburger, or I'm going to fire you from your job, you have to lose your job. If he says, however, one is allowed to speak Rechilus, tail-bearing, if when one speaks it, he's going to prevent a damage from occurring, or it's going to quell a dispute. It will make a dispute less. If that's the case, one is allowed to speak Rechilus, but the Chavetz Chaim says one should not rely on this quickly, because there are a lot of details which we're going to discuss later. Just like Lashon Hara is prohibited to say something negative about somebody, however, if we have certain conditions and there's a constructive purpose, it's permitted. So too in Rechilus, it is also permitted. So obviously in that case, if the boss is pressuring you, and there's a valid reason why you need to say the Rechilus, like to prevent the damage from occurring, then one would be allowed. But he says not to rely on this quickly, and this will be discussed later. Okay, Halacha Zayin. Let's say that by not speaking this Rechilus, this tail-bearing, he's not going to lose his job, he's not going to lose any money, people are going to make fun of him, they're going to denigrate him, they're going to curse him out, do all these horrible things, then still, he's not allowed, of course in that case, he's not allowed to speak Rechilus. And really, one shouldn't be worried about this at all. Meaning, you're doing the right thing. Someone's pressuring you to say, your boss or whoever it is says, hey, tell me what John was saying about me, and you don't want to do it because it's against the Torah, and then him and a bunch of people start mocking you. Oh, look at you, you're so holy, making fun of you, and cursing you out even. One should not be worried about this. He should know in his soul, for this action that he does, for being denigrated for following the Torah, and in the future, he's going to be loved by Hashem, meaning in the next world. Upanav Yair Ka'or Hashem, is his face will shine like the sun. K'moshe Amr Chazal, like the rabbis say, Hana'alavim ve'enam olbim, someone who is shamed and does not shame back. Shomen Cherpasam ve'enam veshivin, or someone who's denigrated and doesn't denigrate back and doesn't answer. Aleim Hakasav Aimer, on that the pasuk says, Ve'oavav, his lovers, Katseis Hashemes Bigvuraso. It's like when the sun comes out in its strength. And all the more so with this, that he is being denigrated to fulfill the commandments of Hashem. So the Gemara refers to somebody who is like mocked publicly and he doesn't respond. That person is very loved in front of God. And his face, obviously some spiritual thing, his face will shine like the sun. And all the more so, if the reason you're being shamed is because you're doing what Hashem wants you to. You're following the mitzvahs, you're following the commandments of Hashem, and because of that people denigrate you, then all the more so you are going to be loved by Hashem and get tremendous reward in the next world. And it says you'll be those that are loved by God, which is a very, very lofty level. I always think of a famous picture in the Holocaust of the rabbi wearing tefillin and talis, and all the Nazis are laughing at him. So here he is. I mean, he was killed after, but not only did he die b'kiddush Hashem, but he was being mocked for following the Torah, and one can't even imagine the wild reward and that this person gets, and the closeness that he has to Hashem for being killed out kiddush Hashem and being mocked for listening to Hashem. So we should think about the next time where someone's pressuring us to do something which is against the Torah, speak Lashon Hara, Rechilus, or whatever it is. We think that Hashem loves those that are embarrassed or denigrated for following the Torah, and they're specifically loved by God, and that La'asad Lavo, in the world to come, his or her face will shine forth like the sun. And with that, everyone should have a beautiful, sunny, enjoyable day.